Hello, beautiful people. Hello, and welcome to the Secrets of a Witch podcast with me, Sabrina Scott. Hello. And on this podcast, as y'all probably know, we talk all about life, love, healing, witchcraft, magic, tarot, mediumship, spirituality, and everything in between. And today's topic is a topic people have fucking opinions about this, and I'm sure some of y'all are not going to agree with me about this, but I don't care. It's my podcast. I'm going to say what I want. And I hope that what I have to say will help shift some of y'all. Okay, so today's topic, ghosting. So if you're single, you probably know what this is. If you've ever been single in the past 5 years, you absolutely know what this is. So, but for those of y'all who have been living under a rock, or maybe your culture does not use this term in the vernacular, which is totally possible. So ghosting basically means when someone just disappears. So as someone who is a medium and grew up in spiritualism, talking to spirits, I always find this term to just be like a bit odd because ghosts are actually very present. Like all over the place. If you just know where to look for them, if you know how to talk to them, they're fucking everywhere. And so I find this term a bit bizarre. But aside from that, let's just put that aside and take this term at face value. So what does it mean? It means that you're talking with someone and then you don't hear from them again. Maybe you go on a date and you don't hear from them again. And this can happen after one date. This can happen after just chatting a bit. This can happen after 6 months. Like it's a thing. It just means you disappear. You don't give closure, quote unquote, give closure. And so what is really fascinating about this, and I think my opinion about this is going to be really controversial. I got in a conversation with some ladies about this a few days ago, and my opinion was not popular, and that is okay with me because whatever, it's my life, YOLO. But okay, so the common thing about ghosting is people think that this is a very bad thing. People genuinely are like, this is terrible. It's so rude. It's so like bad social skills. If you ghost, it means you're a bad person, blah, blah, blah. And like, there's no closure. And like, they didn't tell me they weren't interested anymore. They didn't tell me why they weren't interested. There's no closure. Like, that's the common complaint about this, right? This complaint about ghosting and like why everyone apparently right now thinks that if you ghost, you're an evil demon from hell or something like that. And so my opinion about ghosting is very different from, I think, most people. So my opinion about ghosting is I actually don't see the big deal. I do not see the big deal about ghosting. Ghosting does not bother me in any way. I don't care. It does not hurt my feelings. Like it just, it is what it is. And I think what a lot of people fail to understand about ghosting is that the lack of response, the lack of closure, quote unquote, that actually is a form of closure. And so my opinion is that too many people these days are so obsessed with this idea of closure. And I just find that very odd. And I think it comes from a bit of an insecure place. It comes from a place, I think, of everyone's going to hate me for saying this, but I think from a place of somewhat, at least, low self-worth, where you're not just like moving on with your life and, doing your thing. And I think it also comes from a place of entitlement, right? Like people feel entitled for this total stranger to give them quote unquote closure. And I just find that like very strange. It's like if we meet once, let's say, I don't owe you anything and you don't owe me anything. Like, that's okay. Like, if we're just chatting, I don't owe you anything and you don't owe me anything. Like, if you've been dating for 6 months and someone ghosts, like, that's maybe a bit of a different thing. And I have told people, I just need some space, and then disappeared into the ether. But that is how I felt. Like, I felt like I need space. Like, if I've been dating someone for quite some time and they did something that hurt my feelings or it just was not the vibe for me, like, yeah, I have said that. I probably will say that again. And I think people's entitlement, whoever feels entitled to an explanation, whoever feels entitled to a response, whoever feels entitled to like whatever, like I think that's something to kind of examine and just like look at with some curiosity and just ask yourself, why do I feel that? Like, why do I feel like this person I don't know owes me anything? Right? And if you're someone who really takes pride in not ghosting, if you're someone who takes pride in being really direct, like you do you, boo, like whatever works for you, like YOLO, do your thing, it's okay. I'm not going to tell you to live differently. But if you are someone who takes it really personally when someone ghosts or when someone just like doesn't tell you like, hey, I had fun, but I don't think this is a love connection for me, I just examine that. Like, why are you so concerned with it after like one date or two dates? Like, why? It's very, very interesting to me, you know? And so I think it's just something that's important to think about, right? Like this obsession with closure, this obsession with like endings and like perfectly tied bows. And I think a lot of people suffer because they require closure. And one of the things that I've learned is that closure is often not going to happen. You know, like anyone who knows my story, and I'm not going to get into it now, like y'all know I have some like childhood things that were terrible, and I'm never going to get closure for a lot of that. And that, like, my desire for closure really held me back for many years, and it actually impeded my healing because I was basically basing my healing on someone else's actions. And so what does that mean? That means I had an external locus of control, right? And so anyone who is looking for closure about anything from anyone else is doing that exact same thing and making that exact same mistake that I made when I was younger, right? So whenever we're upset about ghosting or whenever we are upset about a quote unquote lack of closure, we are moving our locus of control and our basis for emotional stability and internal peace from within ourselves to actually putting that outside of ourselves and having our okayness based on what other people are doing or not doing. And that is a fast track to misery, because what I've learned over the years is that we cannot control other people. We have no control over their actions. So we have no control over whether anyone apologizes or gives us a yes or no or whatever. We have no control over that. And so whenever we allow our own emotions to be swayed by waiting on someone else, we are doing ourselves a disservice, in my opinion. And y'all might be like, oh my God, Sabrina, like, how do you do that? That sounds like so hard. Like, why? That sounds impossible. Like, aren't you just letting them off the hook? And it's like, maybe I am, but I am at a point in my life, and I highly encourage this, by the way, where I don't really feel the need of persuading anyone of anything. I don't feel the need of persuading anyone of my value, of my worth, that I deserve certain things. I'm just like not interested in like having that conversation. Like, people either believe that or they don't. And if they don't, then like, bye. That's like that simple. It's really that simple. It's that simple, and that can be a really challenging thing, right? And I get that. But I think it's okay to just like have that peace within ourselves, you know, and to know that whatever else anyone does, like, we're going to be fine. And I think people get so preoccupied with what other people are doing, which I find very interesting. And I think this obsession with ghosting and seeing it as a negative, it just betrays this same like worldview that, you know, my peace is dependent on other people's behavior, aka closure. And you guys might be thinking like, Sabrina, but like in your past episodes, weren't you talking about the importance of being direct? Like, yes, that's true. I do think it's important to be direct. And at the same time, I think in the early days and weeks of a connection, I actually don't think anyone owes anyone anything. And I think it's actually like wildly inappropriate and entitled to expect quote unquote closure from someone you literally just met and like spent a few hours with, and that's it. I think it's like really an entitled thing. And so if you do find yourself upset by someone ghosting, like what you can just say is no response is a response. They probably weren't that into you for whatever reason, or they just decided it wasn't a fit for whatever reason. That is all the closure you need. If you don't hear from someone within a week after a date, they just weren't that into you. There's nothing else to be said. Like, they're not evil, you're not evil. It's, whatever. Like, sometimes the conversation just isn't worth having. That's my opinion. And so I think it's important just like move on with your head held high and like don't really worry about it. It's like not that big of a deal. And so I think oftentimes people have this fantasy in their heads of like, oh my God, I had this amazing first date. It can be this and that. Like, and I've had people tell me on a first date, like, this was so good, I only want to date you. And in my mind, I'm like, whoa, homie, slow the fuck down. Like, no way. Because on a first date, you don't really know anything about each other. Like, a bit, some things, but you definitely don't have enough information to know whether or not it's, committable. And that's going to be a topic for another podcast episode for sure. Premature commitment. But I think we just all need to make peace with no response is a response. So continue on with your big, beautiful, joyful life full of many things, many activities, many relationships, many friendships, many connections. Just keep living. It's really not a very big deal. And I think this skill of learning to find closure within ourselves is one of the most important life skills any of us can learn. And so if you have not yet learned that, I would really encourage you to just learn to be okay with how that feels, right? To find closure within yourself. And to feel less entitled to other people's time, energy, and explanation. Because this upsetness about ghosting, I really do feel like it comes from also a space of entitlement and a desire to control the actions of other people. And I think we just all need to learn that, like, that's not the way to be. Right? Because sometimes, like, some stuff just doesn't really need to be said. Like, do you really need to tell somebody, like, I really didn't like the way that you blew your nose on our date, and so I'm not going to be dating you anymore? Do you really need to say that if it was only one date? Like, is that really necessary? Like, if it's multiple dates, then, like, maybe sure. You're doing someone a solid by telling them that their hygiene is, like, not up to par. Like, maybe you want to do that, maybe you don't. But do you owe that to anyone? No. Like, we're all grown-ass adults here. You're not responsible for anybody. And you're not responsible for someone else's emotions and lack of groundedness within themselves. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. I think this is a topic that a lot of people get very spicy about. And so I will leave that provocation in y'all's lap. And just, it's an invitation to reflect and find that closure within yourself. I think that is one thing that we can all learn to do and we'll all benefit from. So if you do get ghosted, don't take it personally. It is what it is. It is what it is. Don't give it your thought. Don't give it your attention. Don't give it your heartache. Just smile and move on. And you guys might be like, Sabrina, that is spiritual bypassing. You are bypassing the emotions and pushing them underneath the rug. It's like, why do you have so many emotions about someone you literally just met in the first place? That's the real question. So reflect on that. Okay. And I think sometimes when people do have so much emotion about like being ghosted by someone they went on one date with, it's like, maybe that comes from a scarcity mindset. Maybe you thought that like, oh my God, I haven't had such a good connection in such a long time and there's no one else I'm going to have such a good connection with. That is a lie, my friend. There's many people on this planet that you can connect with. The universe is abundant with awesome people. I guarantee you will meet more of them. Keep looking, keep moving, and keep your head held high. It's really not that more complicated than that. Okay, friends, that's the episode. I will catch you on the flip side. I hope you have a wonderful day. I am relaunching, proper launching my feminine energy course, Goddess Rising. So stay tuned. More info on that to come. Catch you on the flip side. Bye, friends.